Everyone seems to have a really strong opinion on food, rightfully so, but today we are speaking with the editor of Feast magazine, Jenny Vergara, and we learn what it means to be a true foodie, her thoughts on Anthony Bourdain, and so much more. Please take a listen today. It's really interesting. Jenny Vergara, contributing editor of Feast magazine and ultimate foodie. Welcome to Ingredients to Happiness. See, we have ingredient in the name.
Yes.
So, I mean, come on, it's about food. It's not really about donuts.
Donuts would make me really happy, though, I have to say, as a food writer.
We have a good time with donuts.
Yep.
So, how did you get into what you're doing? I mean, is it just a love of food? Is it the creative process that goes into serving, wonderful meals to people? What is it?
Mm-hmm. That is a great question. I think at the heart of everyone who is in hospitality, it's people. Like, you're fundamentally interested in people and their stories. Food just happened to be my thing, and it took me a long time to figure that out. So
How did you figure it out? I mean, what's the process? Because
I know.
I would say a lot of our listeners do love food, so
For sure.
it's got to be more than that, though.
No, it's for me, really personally, I had a whole kind of corporate marketing career that was unrelated to food for many years. I wasn't a foodie then. It came on slowly over a course of a couple of years for me, but basically for about 20 years, I had a corporate marketing career, and I was working for Payless Cashway's corporate office, which was a building materials company in Kansas City. That was my first job right out of college. I moved to Kansas City straight out of college. I'm originally from Oklahoma, and took that job and then ended up working in Topeka for about 10 years at Payless Shoe Source corporate office when they were still a thing. They are now no more. And after that, I had my kid, and once I had my first child, I decided, Topeka was too far to commute, and so I brought it back to Kansas City, and when I did, I got a job working as the marketing director for Zio's Italian Kitchen, which was a casual dining Italian chain, which is also no more, I don't think. A lot of these places are no more.
So what's the advice here is don't hire Jenny if you want to stick around?
Right. I'm the secret sauce.
Nah.
But no, so basically that was really where food marketing met for me. And doing that job, it was a small leadership team, and we all kind of worked together to basically run these kind of 15 restaurants that were kind of scattered throughout the Midwest and a little bit into the West. And that was the first time that I got inside a restaurant and was really working with restaurant employees, training them, talking to them, creating wine lists, doing marketing promotions, that kind of stuff. And I thought, oh, wow. And it was at that exact same time that I started to learn to cook. So somewhere between all of that, I realized this could be a really fun career path for me. And so I didn't really know what that meant, but they eventually decided to move the corporate office for Zio's back to Tulsa, which is where it was from. It's part of Mazio's Corporation in Tulsa.
Yeah.
And when they did that, my life was here, my family was here. I wasn't going to move back to Oklahoma, so I pretty much said, well, I'm sorry, I can't move with you, so I guess I quit. And we all went out for drinks.
That's what you do when you quit.
Once we got our packets, right, we went out for cocktails. And really pretty much after that, I got a phone call just literally within the hour, and it was the corporate office from Mazio's, and they were like, we want you to stay on and just basically work from home. Come to Tulsa when we need you, but basically, you could just do what you wanted. And I grabbed that immediately because I thought, good, I'll still get to do what I love, right?
Yeah.
It's still this food and marketing. But really what it gave me was the runway to figure out what's next, because I knew it wasn't going to be a forever gig. They'd made it really clear this was a short time, 1 to 2 year kind of opportunity. And I figured out if I got up early, got my kid off to school, and got back to my desk by 8 o'clock, if I worked really hard, by 1 p.m., I was pretty much done for the day with what I needed to do for Zio's. And I had the rest of the day kind of to dream and plan and build. And I ended up launching a food blog because of it. It was called Making a Foodie. It's still out there somewhere in the universe. I occasionally still post to it. About once a year now I'm posting to it. But yeah, that food blog was really the start. And it was 2007. It was at the start of Food Network. And so all of a sudden people were starting to wonder who these chefs were that were
Food Network's only that? Really?
Yeah.
I feel like Food Network's been around for a long time.
I know. Nope.
Interesting.
Nope. 2007 was really when the chef content on Food Network took off, and it just so happened I was writing a blog about what the chefs were doing, what they were eating, what they were cooking, what ingredients they were working with, what techniques they were using in their restaurants. And so mine wasn't a recipe blog, which was very common, and it wasn't
Sure.
a food critic blog. It was just basically kind of a chef's blog. And other than my mom and the chefs in Kansas City, I don't think anybody else was reading my blog at the time.
Hey, that's why we have one view on our podcast.
Right.
It's my mom.
Right, exactly. So, really after that, it was just a matter of time before I figured out I needed to monetize what I was doing. Blogging was great. It gave me a platform. It helped me start to build an audience of fans, but it really wasn't bringing in money. So I sat down basically with Colby Geralds. He was the first one to kind of suggest it to me. He's the owner of Blue Stem and Rye, obviously with his wife, Megan. And we were at an event, and I said, "What's new, man? What's going on?" Just trying to catch up with him. And at the time, sous vide was kind of a new thing, and he had a new sous vide fish dish that was on his menu at Blue Stem that he couldn't sell. Basically, every time someone ordered it, it came back, and it didn't have this because the fish didn't have grill marks. It didn't look cooked. Sous vide is a very gentle cooking method.
Yeah.
And he was just angry about it, and he said if they would just taste it, like it's so buttery, it's so flaky, it's delicious, it's perfectly cooked. But I can't get anybody to kind of play with me on this. And I said, well, hey, why don't you let me come in and I'll buy that dish and write about it for the blog and explain to people what sous vide is. And he said, well, you find 20 friends and we'll do a dinner and I'll serve that fish. And that was the seed of how all of this got started, really. Test Kitchen was kind of born out of that. I went home that night, decided to build my website, and got business cards that had Test Kitchen, get on the list, and the URL for the website address where people could get on my mailing list, and the dinners kind of rolled from there.
Yeah, so, explain that concept of Test Kitchen. What do you do?
Yeah. Test Kitchen is basically my underground supper club, and it was the first one in Kansas City, I'm very proud to say, and probably at this point is probably the longest running supper club. But basically it's a different chef in a different location every month, or maybe twice a month. And
is it at their restaurant, or where is it?
No, we don't let.
Or is it a secret?
No, well, the location is always secret. So when you put your name in my lottery, basically I'll send you an email when it's time to open up a new dinner, and you'll get to know the chef, you'll get to know the menu, you get to know the date and the times, obviously, but you won't know where you're going to eat the dinner.
Okay.
So you won't know until 24 hours before the event, and then you get your final email once you've paid for your seats. You get to know where you're going. But it's a cocktail hour with 5 to 7 courses. It's $125 a person, and it's just basically kind of an experiential dining experience with a bunch of strangers. But
Sure.
by the end of that experience, you're not strangers anymore. You've all sat around a common
What's an
table.
example of a location?
Yeah, so I don't allow chefs in their home restaurants because that is dinners they can host themselves. That's like a wine dinner that they can
Sure.
host. So this is to keep their skin in the game a little bit, and to also allow me to take my members into really unique places. So recently we were in a furniture warehouse where furniture is made down in the River Market, and on the top level happened to be an apartment. And so we just went ahead, and it was John Kennedy from Rye. He's the executive chef at Rye on the Plaza. And he did an amazing dinner called Delicatessen, which was all based on deli food, kind of like upscale presentations of different types of deli food. And he cooked it in this beautiful kind of a loft apartment, basically, that was sitting on top of a
I was going to say,
furniture.
you have to be close to a kitchen somewhere.
Yeah. So the one thing I have to have is you have to have a kitchen.
And how many people go to this?
There's 30 people at every
30?
dinner.
Okay.
Yeah. I've got about 8,000 people on my mailing list at this point, if you can imagine that, after 12 years of doing this.
Yeah. So, it's pretty hard to get in.
Yeah.
How's the lottery work?
Yeah. So the lottery actually is...
I demand transparency.
Yes, I'm happy to give it. It's an Excel document, thank God, that
Okay.
has a button on it that somebody wrote me a script for 1,000,000 years ago. But basically, I punched that button, and 30 names dropped down, and I passed those.
Oh, really?
Yep, passed those people. And
So there's no favoritism?
I mean, if my mom put in, or my brother, maybe. Family. But no, really, I mean, I try to keep it super fair. Sometimes, it's one of those things where of the 30 that are dropped down, probably 20% can't come, can't get a babysitter, didn't work out, the time doesn't work, whatever.
Sure.
So then I'll have to hit it again and basically just backfill with people.
So you mentioned earlier you decided to learn how to cook. I feel like that's an ambition of a lot of people, but it's like, hey, I'm going to run a marathon sort of thing.
Right.
A lot of people don't end up doing it. How did you what pushed you over the edge to actually want to learn how to cook? Because I've said this for 5 years. I'm going to learn how to cook more than donuts. I'm going to be a great chef.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the part about cooking is that anybody can be. Most of us watched a parent or a grandparent or somebody in our lives that was kind of the food person that prepared all the holiday meals,
Sure.
if you will. So For me, I was married for 15 years to a man who was from Brazil. And his mother and I had opened up a shop that sold foods, arts, and crafts from Brazil.
Interesting.
And we had our first Thanksgiving together as a newly married couple. This was many, many moons ago. And
a Brazilian Thanksgiving had to be interesting.
Well, so for him it was really terrible because it was basically an Oklahoma Thanksgiving because I just made what my family had always made, right?
What'd you have? Like the turkey? The traditional stuffing,
there was
cranberry.
hot rolls, there was corn, there was green bean casserole, cranberry salad, all that. We had the traditional.
Yeah.
And, in Brazil, they don't celebrate Thanksgiving, obviously, so he didn't grow up with it. And at the end of the meal, he said this was delicious and everything was wonderful. He said, I would love to see a few of the more festive party dishes that we traditionally serve in Brazil woven in.
Sure,
so there's something from my culture that feels like I'm celebrating too. And, he was a citizen before we married. So he came here when he was 8. But, at that point I was like, oh my God, I didn't even think to incorporate anything from his culture. I didn't even ask the question. I just thought Thanksgiving, this is what we make, right? We all have our menus that we make every year. So that was really, I was embarrassed, I think, and I thought, I need to do better, I need to be better. And so that was really the impetus for me to cook. His grandmother, Dona Ita, was the cook in the family, and she lived in St. Louis. So we basically brought her over for about a month, and she stayed in our guest bedroom. And every night after work, I would just sit down with a notepad, and she would teach me a different dish kind of her family's favorite recipes, and I wrote all of it down.
That's commitment right there.
Yeah. Now, in kind of funny now is that he and I obviously are divorced, but we still have our son together. #tasty is how I refer to him to keep his privacy, allow him to have his own kind of social media footprint, if you will. But last year for Thanksgiving, I thought, I cannot look at another turkey. I cannot do white meat one more year. No, I was done.
Interesting.
I felt like I'd eaten so much turkey or chicken and turkey kind of last year that I thought I want something totally different. So I did a full Brazilian Thanksgiving, and it was just basically every Brazilian dish I'd ever learned to make. And I ended up having my son that year for Thanksgiving, and I wanted him to help me kind of make these dishes so we could cook together. And my ex-mother-in-law ended up coming. My Brazilian mother-in-law came and enjoyed the meal with us.
That's wonderful.
So yeah, it was really great. And we had just kind of odds and ends of friends and family that just happened to be in town. And so turnabout is fair play. But that's how you express your love. One of the ways that I express my love, I think, is through food.
Oh, that's really good. And then to be a foodie, what does that even mean? People say they're foodies. I guess I could call myself a foodie, but then again, I like cheese pizza and plain hamburgers, but I like other stuff too.
The word foodie makes a lot of people really angry these days, and I understand why. It
seems like a lightning rod.
The meaning of the word has changed significantly. In 2007, when I named my blog "The Making of a Foodie," I wanted to say the making of because you're never really done, right? You're always learning, you're always adding new things. So I was, a food person in the making is kind of how I viewed it. And I wrote a blog post called The F Word because about 2009, 2010, there was a real turn in terms of people using the word foodie, and it became very negative. Negative term, people who just eat or who are gluttonous, who really don't know a lot about food, who use the word yummo and delish.
So, what is there a true definition or?
There actually is a handbook. The official foodie handbook was written in 1984.
Okay, so before all the trends.
Right. And I have a copy of it. And, these were probably the first helicopter parents. They're basically people who love food, and they raise their children to love food and, and to learn how to eat organically and, eat the best quality ingredients. And the slow food movement kind of came out of all of this. So there is actually an official handbook, which I do have a copy of. I will cop to, but I need
to see this handbook.
I don't think there's anything really wrong with the word foodie. It's become such a dirty word. I had someone years and years ago kind of confront me. How could you call yourself a foodie? That's such a terrible, word. And I said, it really wasn't. It was the only word I had to describe what I was doing at the time, which was, I felt like I was on a quest to learn as much as I could about food. And it captured the sense of adventure I had.
Would you call Anthony Bourdain a foodie?
No, he would absolutely slaughter me or anyone else who called him a foodie, I think. No, I wouldn't say that at all.
Why would he be offended by that?
Well, I think fundamentally he's a cook at heart, but he very quickly morphed into the voice of an entire generation of people, particularly chefs who are in the kitchen. Like he became kind of the chef's spokesperson. And, I don't think there's probably many chefs.
So a chef can't be a foodie is what I'm hearing.
I don't know that they can't be. I would tell you that they would shy away from calling themselves that.
Sure.
I think by nature of what they do. Now, I've seen the other side of the equation too. There are plenty of young chefs out there who cook fine dining all day, work with incredible ingredients, and go home and treat their bodies and themselves really terribly with, a frozen pizza,
guilty,
and a yard beer every night, and that's what they eat because they're not getting paid anything to do what they do, unfortunately. So it takes money, it takes interest. I have become a bit of a one-trick pony, I would tell you, over the years in terms of my interest, because everything that I love ends up touching food in some way, whether it's food trends or food writing or dining out or being interested in like the newest ingredients. Like everything I tend to gravitate toward ends up coming back to food and has kind of a hospitality component to it. So I just stopped fighting it after a while. It was like,
What's your favorite type of cuisine? I mean, is it, I would say a lot of Americans would say Italian.
Yeah, Italian's comforting, right?
Yeah, they like cheese and...
There is kind of this strange thing about Italian, what we consider Italian in America is kind of more the Sicilian red sauce and pizza and pasta.
But
right?
And then you forget about all the seafood too.
Right. And then you actually go to Italy and you realize that it's really just about fresh ingredients in season. The very best of what the season has to offer is really what you're eating on your plate, and it's usually prepared so simply. And so there's always, I find this at Test Kitchen quite a lot, it usually is an older gentleman, usually about 60 to 65 years old, who's traveled the world, and all of a sudden he'll say, oh my gosh, I just got back from Italy, and I'm telling you, I had the best salad I've ever had. I mean, the tomatoes were so ripe, the mozzarella so fresh, the basil green and vibrant, if only we could have that here in Kansas City. And I'm like, you absolutely can if you eat in season and you buy locally and organically. You can have that experience. I think as Americans, though, we don't always realize that, tomatoes in January in the grocery store is not the time to be buying tomatoes. And I'm on a personal quest. I will cop to it right now. If I could figure out a way to get the restaurants in Kansas City to say, Jasper is a great example.
Yeah.
He's actually
Episode 1 of the podcast.
Yep. He's actually done this. His caprese salad, which has tomatoes, basil, and mozzarella, goes off the menu when tomatoes aren't in season. Yeah. I don't want your mushy pink tomato in January on my BLT or on my burger. I just save it. Like, if it's not good, don't serve it. Yeah. And I've picked off more terrible pink tomatoes just thinking to myself, it's not summer. Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
It's a food cost everybody could save. So, and I think if all of us just try to be a little bit more mindful about, what we're putting in our bodies, and when we had to wait a long time for tomatoes this year, finally here we are in kind of July and August is like peak tomato, like eat all the tomatoes, people, like have your tomato salad, get your tomato soup, get your BLT, get whatever you eat your tomatoes on, eat them now.
So, I mean, there definitely is a big push, not only just for fresh, but the organic. And, there seems to be a lot of debate on, like, the GMO foods. And have you had to write about that at all or cover that? Or is that too polarizing and political and not fit within kind of the realm?
If there are parts to it that gets woven in. My beat tends to be more kind of chefs and restaurants, and not necessarily farms. Although Feast does every year we dedicate an episode to kind of local farmers, urban farmers. What's happening in our own local scenes, and try to cover people who are doing it right. I just think as awareness grows, there's so many health issues that are going to be able to be addressed by just eating simply and understanding, you want to eat things that taste good. You don't want to have to do you shouldn't have to do a bunch of stuff to your ingredients to make them taste good. And that always starts with just like dining in season. But the GMO stuff tends to fall more in kind of farming and agriculture, which is not necessarily what I cover kind of day to day.
So then what about, since you've started covering chefs, have you seen the general dynamic of what they cook change, or has it been pretty consistent over the last 10, 12 years?
It is interesting is that we celebrate 12 years of Test Kitchen now in Kansas City and 10 in Tulsa. what I've noticed is that test kitchen tends to be a little bit of the barometer of what chefs are interested in and what they're cooking. So when snout to tail was kind of a thing, right? All of a sudden we were eating whole animals from the tip of their nose to the tip of their tail and everything in between. A lot of offal, a lot of guts and body parts, right?
Yeah.
We saw a lot of it at test kitchen. Chefs were bringing that to test kitchen. When gastromolecular cuisine and foams and gelees and that kind of stuff was hot, we saw a lot of that. Right now, we're starting to get our first, vegetable vegan, like right now, this year. I've had a couple of people, chefs approach me about doing vegan dinners and using all natural wines. So I think whatever is in the zeitgeist of what the chefs are thinking about, what they're reading about, what they want to try, what they want to do, tends to be brought to test kitchen. So I absolutely feel like I've kind of ridden the wave of all of these different kind of techniques. And
Can we talk a little bit about the vegan movement?
Sure.
I mean, because I think it's growing. I mean, we've been offering vegan donuts this year. I mean, that's not something I really would have thought of maybe 8 years ago even.
So what are you making your vegan donuts out of?
So, well, we have a collaboration with Kind Food.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. I love those guys.
So, yeah, we have coconut bacon on top, for
Got
instance.
it.
Because people still like
Yeah.
maybe that smoky
delicious.
meat flavor,
delicious.
but also want to be, responsible or adhere to their beliefs.
Got it.
So yeah, and we use sugar that doesn't have bone char in it. So yeah, I mean,
Interesting.
I don't know. Is vegan maybe like riding some of the coattails of the gluten-free trend, or I mean, is there a connection there? Because then there's also gluten-free vegan,
Right.
which is a big deal as well.
Right. Gluten-free, paleo, vegan, vegetarian, I mean, all of these are kind of modified ways of eating that you can choose to eat. And over the last couple of years, I would tell you, with Michael Pollan, obviously he has Netflix specials, he has books out now.
Yep.
There's many, many people who are writing specifically about how your health improves, the greenhouse gases, that it's more green to eat this way. When you're not having so much meat in your diet, it's better for your health.
Sure. Yeah.
There's a million reasons why you should be doing this, and I think as that kind of hits more mainstream, you see more and more people trying it, trying different things and figuring out what the right mix is for you. I think most people are what I would call flexitarian, which means it speaks a lot to kind of the younger generation, which is kind of, I'm always interested in listening to what people order. So if I'm in a restaurant, I'm not necessarily looking at the menu and thinking about what I'm going to order. I'm actually got my antenna tuned to what everybody else around me is ordering at other tables.
Okay.
Because it helps me kind of understand, like, where are we right now? And I'll give you a great example. I was at a food truck festival, and I was in line for crepes. And there was two young ladies in front of me. And they were talking, oh, well, which crepe are you going to get? I'm going to get this one. And one of them said to the other, well, I had meat yesterday, so I think today I'll do the vegan crepe. And so it's kind of this idea of, I don't need meat all the time.
Sure.
I eat it occasionally, and if I have it yesterday, I probably won't have it today. And it's this kind of flexible way of eating that allows you to still be mindful of all of the good things that, eating that way can do for your body and for the environment.
My dish at Chipotle that I get is vegan.
Yeah.
I don't do it
Yeah.
because that,
Right.
unfortunately, I just do it because it tastes good.
Right.
So, I mean, I
That's right.
think we are seeing a lot more vegan dishes going mainstream.
Well, I will say this about that. Vegan has gone through this interesting cycle where when it first started, it was like microbiotic, organic, brown, dirt-flavored food. And that's really kind of where it started. And vegetables,
Sure.
grains that were kind of dirt-flavored and vegetables to go with. And we have transitioned from that into, all of a sudden, with our technology, we were able to create kind of faux types of meat, right? The faux bacon, the faux sausage,
The Impossible Burger.
the Impossible Burger, right?
Yeah.
All of these now that even they even bleed, right? And now we're kind of getting to the point where we should just have vegan options. And I don't even know necessarily that we need to say, this is our vegan stuff, unless somebody specifically asks. Because the truth is, we should just go, that's delicious food. And vegan food is getting to the point now where it does have enough variety. I'll give you a great example here locally is Taqueria Vegana is a new vegan pop-up that's happening at the Bite in the
Well,
River
one of my
Market.
favorite restaurants was Eden Alley.
Yeah.
Before they closed, vegan
Yeah.
restaurant.
Yeah. And Eden Alley was probably on the cusp of the original kind of
Yep.
holistic way to eat. And they quickly, they were able to kind of transition into more interesting food. But you're seeing kind of vegan junk food now. I mean, that just goes to show you how far it's come at this point. But, you want to be mindful that you're not eating that all the time if you're doing it for your health. Tortilla chips are still fried in oil.
That's true.
Still fried in vegetable oil.
That's so true.
Yeah.
So I mean, with happiness, how do you think food plays into happiness in general for people, not just you?
Well, this is a very tricky subject for a lot of people because a lot of people tend to reward themselves with food, and that can be a challenge. It can be a good thing and a bad thing. I mean, it's the way we celebrate, it's the way we grieve. We use it to make us feel good. We use it when we feel bad. So food has a lot of power in terms of nostalgia and creating memories and times together and familiar dishes from your childhood that you love. I just had grilled cheese and tomato soup yesterday. Oh my gosh. Like there's nothing better. Like if I was on death row, that would be my dish. And it's just like a childhood.
It was very hot yesterday. So I know. That's like a fall winter dish to me.
Yeah, it totally was. But it was just one of those things. I had some good fresh bread. I was in the mood for it. I had some good cheese and I thought I'm going to go for it.
Now, let me ask you about this. Chili and cinnamon rolls.
Yes. Yeah, no.
Apparently that's not a thing everywhere.
No, it's not. It's not. I don't even think, is it a thing here? Like I don't
know. I grew up with it.
Did you?
Yeah.
Where did you grew up here?
Yeah, in Kansas City.
Oh. I thought it was an Iowa thing. Like I'm still not sure I believe that cinnamon rolls and chili are a thing.
I mean, we went to school. They would serve it at school.
Yes, so it does have roots. I will say this. I did track it back for KCUR at one point when I was on the Food Critics show. I was like, I have to figure out where this came from. It did come from a cafeteria worker. And it came from the staples that the government gives cafeteria workers to work with because they have to work within a certain nutritional pyramid. Mm-hmm. And at the time, you had to have a carb and
you got to have a cinnamon roll. You got to have a slice of pizza.
Right.
Here's a fun fact, though, actually. So how we designed our cinnamon rolls for all our donut shops, the recipe was helped with a cafeteria worker.
Interesting.
She was the head of food service at the school I grew up in.
Yep.
And so our cinnamon rolls do have roots in the whole chili cinnamon roll thing.
My thing about a cinnamon roll is that I want to taste the cinnamon in it first and foremost. And I want it cooked all the way through. I don't want a gummy middle, right? I want it cooked all the way through, and then I want just enough frosting. Like too much, a big schmear, not so much. A glaze, probably a little more than a glaze, somewhere between.
It's got to be,
you know what I mean?
More than that.
More than a blob, so yeah, that's where I'm
actually,
at on
it's funny. Jasper and Rowley and I, we text back and forth about cinnamon rolls.
Yeah.
And because he was on a big kick, I don't know, like 6 months ago, on perfecting a cinnamon roll.
Wow.
And so he texted me and asked what we were doing, and I don't know, but that's cool because
orange rolls are my jam though.
Orange.
Oh, I love. I mean, so you've got an orange creamsicle donut right now on your menu, and that has been the flavor of the summer.
Yes.
Like there's been cocktails and I mean, if I could go, what is the flavor of this summer? 2019, it would be orange creamsicle.
See, this is interesting because we've been doing it for 5 years.
Interesting. Well, that would replace kind of the orange roll that I'm looking for. I want cinnamon and orange together. I want orange zest in it.
Okay.
That's because my mom grew up making the Pillsbury orange rolls instead of the cinnamon rolls. That's probably why I've got that.
Yeah, I mean, but that goes back to your point about nostalgia. I mean, I feel like that's a big driver in people. Celebration. I mean, that's a big part of our business.
Right.
And so I'm not saying you should eat donuts every single day or anything like that, but every once in a while, have fun.
No, I'm definitely in the camp that you should treat yourself, and being mindful of all things being equal, you should definitely not live a life that doesn't have a donut in it or whatever your special treat is. Everybody's got their thing.
So what are the big trends that you're seeing now? I mean, obviously creamsicle is a part of the summer, but what's going on?
It's interesting. I think we've kind of settled into this place where fine dining has gotten a lot more casual. Gone are the white tablecloth restaurants. We really are eating out more as a society, and I think we're just demanding more. We don't want to dress up, and we don't want to have fancy food or pay a lot of money. So we're trying to look for those places that we feel comfortable, that we can get everybody can be served. Mom can have a glass of wine, Dad can have a beer, the kids can get what they want. Something that fulfills everybody's needs. I think that's really becoming more and more common. And, in Kansas City in particular, because we're in the Midwest and we have access to so many great, produce and meat and all of that, I think it's really about deciding what food, we are known for. Like, what is Kansas City's food all about? So right now it's all about Midwestern ingredients and what's in season and cooking with, what we have here, and not necessarily trying to do, a bunch of tropical fruit when we don't grow tropical fruit here,
That's fair.
So I think we're really just trying to kind of hone in and make our food really comforting, because that's what we do best here in the Midwest, and make it from local ingredients, that just so it could just taste as best as it possibly can taste, like the very best ingredients.
We flew in fresh pineapple for Christmas last year.
You did?
It was like a $32 pineapple.
What did you do with the $32 pineapple?
We
A
cut
cocktail?
it up. No,
You just ate it?
we just ate it.
You thought
Straight
a
up.
pineapple from Hawaii is what I need for Christmas.
Yeah, and by the way, it really hurts your mouth when you eat like a whole pineapple.
I'm sure it does. There's a lot of acid in pineapple. I'll take the enamel off your teeth.
Oh, well, don't tell my dentist.
No.
So what's a really good dish you've had in the last year? And what's a not so good dish?
Like in a restaurant or something I've made myself?
I don't care.
Or,
Whatever.
Either way. I right now am really interested in Persian cuisine and Middle Eastern cuisine. And both for myself, kind of experimenting at home. There's like this beautiful rice dish that you kind of cook inverted that ends up with this crunchy top on top. It cooks on the bottom, and it basically kind of fries the rice crispy, and you add a bunch of butter to it to make it do that. It's got all these spices and saffron and lovely aromatics, and you basically finish it off in the oven, and then you flip it over, and it's beautiful on the platter with a crispy top. We just got done wrapping up our October issue, I think it is, and it's all Middle Eastern Mediterranean cuisine.
Really?
So I have stomped all over this city eating Middle Eastern cuisine.
Is there a good opportunity to try a whole bunch of that type of cuisine here in Kansas and Missouri?
We have our fair share. So 87th Street in Lenexa has quite a few. There's a whole shopping center that has, Holy Land Cafe kind of anchors this center, and it's got a Middle Eastern bakery and a grocery store, and it's got a hookah lounge that serves a really good hummus. The Middle Eastern bakery is on my list because they do a Middle Eastern breakfast, which looks like pita bread, and there's this egg dish with parsley in it. It's like a bunch of small plates, like tapas, but Middle Eastern tapas. And you're drinking it with Turkish tea, and then you can finish it off with kind of a lovely piece of baklava or some sweet thing from their bakery. It's $9.99, I think, and it's 10 to 2, serve 10 to 2, and I'm going. That's my mission.
That's a great deal, actually.
I know. I can't wait to see it. There's a soup that you get with it, salad. The things they eat for breakfast is really fascinating. So
any not so good dishes?
Not so good dishes.
Do you ever set your expectations too high when you go somewhere, and then you get really let down if your expectations weren't met?
So my expectations are always appropriately low or non-existent.
I feel like that's a life lesson in general, not just food.
Yeah.
If everyone would just lower their expectations a little bit, you'd be a lot happier.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I think, you have to appreciate kind of something in the moment is what I would tell you. It's like, okay, so most of this was probably not good, but you know what? There was this one dish that was really good.
Sure.
If there's something I can hang my hat on, I will talk about a place. But if everything needs work, then I'll give a place time, and I'll come back and I'll try it again on a different day, because, especially when places are new, everybody rushes to go have it, and all the kinks aren't worked out. Not everything's exactly the way probably they would like for it to be or intend for it to be. But
what do you think about that, though? A lot of people that you see, a lot of patrons try and address their issues with restaurants on social media versus hey, did you even try and talk to a manager or your server?
Unfortunately, I think this is kind of the symptom of the internet and hiding behind your keyboard.
Sure.
We used to have to call people on the phone and have conversations.
Sure.
Sometimes tough conversations, business conversations, personal conversations. I tried to call a corporate office this week to get through, and I could not get anybody on the phone. I kept leaving messages, and I thought, why isn't this person picking up? And finally she called me back. She goes, oh my gosh, here's my cell phone. Like, I don't even answer my desk phone.
Oh, wow.
And I can remember when I worked corporately, my boss said, if you're at your desk, your phone will not ring more than once. You will pick it up. I mean, that was just the expectation. So I think as a society, we're just getting really used to having these conversations behind the keyboard and not being able to walk up to someone and say, it's a much better experience for you as a guest and for the manager that you're approaching if you can say, listen, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my meal tonight. There was a few things I was disappointed in, and I just want you to know about it.
Well, I would say, because they always say, how was everything?
Right.
Everyone just says good.
Right.
Kind of like, how are you doing? Good,
Right.
How are you?
Right. Well, and there's a trick to that for me. And for me, if everything is terrible and I'm at a restaurant and somebody says, how was everything? My go-to is what Julia Childs used to say, which was, we had a wonderful time. It just kind of deflects the comment. But you can always tell if a manager or a chef who comes to the table and says, how was everything? Was it good? It was fine. And then if they go, no, really, we really want your feedback. That is the key for me.
They open the door.
Yeah, that's the key for me. They have to dial back twice for me to be able to feel comfortable to say. And if it was really a disaster and I was good friends with them, I would send them an email and say, listen, thank you so much. I had a great time. Here's just a few things that I would say if you were looking for feedback. But, most people aren't ready to hear feedback. Unless they ask for it, they're not ready to hear it. And they won't be receptive to it, has been my experience. And so I always wait until someone says, no, really, I really would like your opinion on this.
So is it appropriate, I guess, most restaurant owners have a love-hate relationship with Yelp.
Right.
Is it appropriate for someone to write 5 paragraphs about their bagel? I know it's a loaded question.
No,
but where should you go to the restaurant first before you go to Yelp? Is that an appropriate outlet?
Ideally, in a perfect world, you would get everything you wanted from a one-on-one interaction and it would take a lot less time. Does it build you up as a super Yelp user on their platform if you do it that way? No. Will you likely get a free coupon to come back again? Probably, So I think there's just so much to be said for having the character to really say, listen, I don't know if you're looking for feedback. I'd like to tell you about my meal. And if they go, look, I don't have time for this, well then, that's your answer right there. They don't want to hear it. But I struggle with Yelp. I've been pretty vocal in my disdain for it. And it's not really about everyone is entitled to their opinion.
Absolutely.
I think the problem is that so many people who want to have an opinion aren't really educated or don't really understand the mechanics of how the restaurant industry works or how the business works or why things are the way they are and how this ended up happening or turning out. And that's the really sad part, is that when you have people who just with a little education and had they had that one-on-one interaction with the manager to say, oh, well, actually, here's how we do it and the reason why.
It could have been resolved way quicker.
Right. Right. I'm sure you've experienced that here.
Yeah,
when people
obviously
issues.
you could probably guess my thoughts on the matter, but and I guess the other thing too is just the whole perception of people only tend to put out there in the universe if they're upset or if they're extremely happy. Right. So you're missing the majority. Air conditioners going on me. You're missing the majority, though, of the actual happenings of that restaurant. Right. I'll give you an example. Our internal satisfaction rate is 93%. Yeah. Do all of our online listings reflect a 93% rating? No, they don't. Just because if you're satisfied, you're just going to go on with your life. Right. But, for a small business, it means a lot, especially when Apple Maps curates to Yelp reviews. So. You're
absolutely right. I didn't think about that. You're getting just the ends of the spectrum, because if somebody has a perfect experience, they're not likely to say anything to anyone and just go on with their day.
Because you expect that.
That's right. That your expectation was met. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. And then if you have an over the top, you want to tell everybody.
Sure.
I've had that experience.
Absolutely.
And then when you have, something that's just pretty bad. A lot of people think that's the way to solve it.
And they think you personally accosted them, and it's
really strange.
It's all downhill from there.
I don't know how food got so personal.
It did. It's a highly emotional thing, but you know, we've touched on the happy aspects of that,
Right.
and how that can be such a good thing for the world.
Right, right.
And the fact that you're able to sit down and cook a Thanksgiving dinner for your ex-mother-in-law, I mean, that's a
right.
big deal.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're right. Food is a wonderful blessing that can bring people together for sure.
I feel like too, it's the great equalizer. Just, I mean, everyone eats food.
Right. That's right.
And you know, we have billionaires come in here, and we also have, you know, the houseless. So yeah, it's really interesting, and I think there's so much happiness though tied up in it, and I don't know, it keeps me optimistic, and it was an outlet for me to express my happiness, and clearly it is for you as well. So
Right, right.
I don't know, it's really cool.
Yeah, food is awesome. I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be where I'm at, and I'm grateful that food has brought me here, and I'm grateful for all the people it's put me in contact with.
So what's next for you?
What is next for me? How about a podcast? I want a podcast.
Yeah.
I really do. So I have this idea for a podcast that I'm kind of percolating on, and I just need to kind of pull the pieces together. And you know, it's just like everything else when you're kind of freelance and doing your own thing. Every minute is hustle, right? And
Yep.
the second you stop to take a breath and kind of look around and do what you really want to do, you have to carve out and make the time.
Yep.
So I've been talking about it for years now, and I think probably 2020 is going to be my year to try to just, even if I have to pay a fabulous team to help me, like I just feel like there is more to be said on the subject. And part of it has been I don't know if you listen to the Friday Food Show on KCUR, it's every other Friday. But it's Central Standard does kind of a Food Critics Friday food show. And I've so enjoyed being on that show.
Yeah.
I really have enjoyed being on it. And I think I want more of that. When I think about the parts of what I'm doing now.
Our
that I
cinnamon
really
rolls were
enjoy.
on that show.
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's exactly right. Yeah, there's so many kind of great reasons to, but I'd like to get beyond the confines of that show, because that show is, for a food critic, that show is the topic today is cinnamon rolls, go.
Yeah.
Name your top 10 cinnamon rolls. And yeah, okay, top 10 lists until you're kind of, you know, blue in the face. But
I have a lot to say about those lists too.
I'd like to move beyond that and have a deeper discussion about kind of food and its meanings and how it brings people together.
Cool. Well, I appreciate the time. Thanks for coming on.
Of course, I get to sit in here and smell all these beautiful donuts and chat about what I love.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Of course, my pleasure.
Hey everyone, if you liked what you saw, please hit the subscribe button. Also, you can find us on social media in the links below. Thank you.